60's an interesting age. I'm fine physically, but old enough to realise that good health can't be taken for granted. As I hit that key milestone, I was determined to embrace the crazy a little. Do something out of my comfort zone, a grand gesture. Welcome to the BigUn. I'd got my permission slip signed, a bunch of travel books, and even my all-weather riding gear. I guess all I needed now was a route and a riding mate. This was going to be a long trip, so I needed someone who could take a month or so off work, would put in the miles reliably, and above all would have my back if anything were to go sideways. Cue my good mate Mike and his sturdy steed, a Kawasaki 1400 GTR. It's so big it has its own postcode. We just call it the housing estate. We'd allowed ourselves 30 days to start with, but we didn't yet have a map. I'd always wanted to visit Slovenia and Croatia, and Mike wanted to go to Italy, so at least we had a starting point. And then I had a great idea. The best combination of biking roads and great scenery are to be found in the mountains, so it was time to change the map. Using a topographical map, I could draw a line through the high bits and make up a route from there. This was a great starting point, but it took many weeks to arrive at a workable route, dividing the trip up into rideable days and booking a bunch of hotels to get us started. We ended up with the 30 nights we'd planned, plus a few days contingency, and a route of around 4,500 miles. Oh, and I also set a target just for fun of visiting 20 nations along the way. I had to include a few principalities, but hey, my game, my rules. If you're planning your own trip, there's plenty here that you can take and reuse, or you can just enjoy watching some old fellas pushing themselves a bit too hard. It's time to mount up. Kicking off on Monday morning, headed for Luxembourg from Rotterdam, when via a fluke of fate or my cock up on the sat-nav, we ended up doing a little bit of a tour of Rotterdam and pretty much going back to where we started.
Yes, and then we started head off. It was just motorway, wasn't it, really, or dual carriageway?
Most of the day was motorway plodding, and I knew it was going to be a hard one right from the start. The motorway section, around 200 miles running from Rotterdam to Bastogne in Belgium, was pretty tough. It was the kind of route that numbed your bum and your brain in equal measure. I was hot and tired and so bored that occasional homicidal manoeuvres from inattentive motorists came as welcome distractions. I just began to wonder whether I'd done the right thing and whether I was actually capable of managing this huge tour, 5 weeks on the road. Fortunately, and just in the nick of time, we ran out of motorway. The flowing country roads leading eastward across northern Luxembourg, where we were surrounded by beautiful scenery and glorious sunshine, couldn't have come at any better time. For the first time that day, I had a big grin on my face, and even though another wrong turning added a little to our mileage, it just didn't matter, as the roads gave us a much needed energy boost. We pitched up at our hotel in Diekirch rather late in the day. We had time though to walk into town to get some grub and still make a fairly early night of it, as day 2 was also going to be quite heavy. So yeah, that was what was keeping me going the whole day.
Yeah.
Was getting to some really nice roads.
Yeah.
Before we ended up in Diekirch in Luxembourg at the Hotel du Parc.
Yes, that's right.
Nice gentleman, couple of beers.
Yeah. Well, and it was very hot when we got there.
Yes.
And sticky, and we were knackered.
So that was your excuse for a couple of beers, was it?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Early to bed, and up on the Tuesday morning, where we were headed for the Hotel Rossel.
Well, and that was in
Dobel, which was billed as the gateway to the north of the Black Forest.
That's right.
Continuing our quest to put our motorway miles behind us, Mike and I made an early start from our base in northern Luxembourg. By late morning, we'd made our way onto flowing A roads, which for me were engaging but at the same time relaxing. Certainly more relaxing than the endless swathes of overly straight carriageways we'd suffered earlier. Our destination was the Hotel Rossel in Dobel village. We made good progress, and with time in hand I decided to make a stop-off on the way. The village of Marksel, just a few miles from Dobel, is home to a particularly eclectic auto museum, and I was intrigued to take a look. Mike was a bit hot and bothered at this stage, and somewhat reluctant to become even hotter, wandering around inside a museum. And at Marksel was the Auto House Museum.
Oh, before we got to the... Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah. Very, very, very hot and sticky, I seem to remember at that time.
Yeah.
A little bit reluctant to go in. Was it air conditioned? I don't know. And when we got in, it wasn't really air conditioned,
Well,
but it was a bit cooler, wasn't it?
It was a lot cooler in certain places, but as we came down, the lower down you came within the building, the cooler it got. And when we went down into the cellar where he had his water wheel spinning his own hydroelectric plant, it was very cool down there. What a place.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a museum with everything from sewing machines to bits of telecom equipment to cameras to a helicopter.
I don't think, well, why not? And then we wandered around all the exhibits and it was just gobsmacking.
I think there was little pumps and there were like zillions of them, and propane burners.
And minces.
Minces, yes.
Mince meat.
You can never have too many mince meat minces. I can't even say, but you can never have too many of them. It's day 3, and today we run south through the Black Forest. This area features a famous road, the B500, or Schwarzwald-Hochstrasse, the Black Forest High Road, to give it its full name. This road has an enviable reputation for its great scenery and for providing an extended route full of flowing bends. However, it's been rather a victim of its own success. The sheer volume of enthusiastic drivers and riders enjoying the route prompted complaints from the locals. In response, the authorities have drastically reduced speed limits throughout, and the area is heavily policed for both speed and noise infractions. We built a little of the B500 into our route so that we could experience the changes for ourselves. The overall effect of the speed limit changes is indeed quite dramatic. Whilst the roads are in good condition, the route is now anything but flowing, and whilst the surroundings might be scenic, it's difficult to appreciate that when your attention is continually focused on your speedo, trying to make sure that you don't exceed the very slow limits. Typically, the speed limit on the B500 is around 40 miles an hour or slower, and it's further reduced on some bends and junctions. That really does feel artificially slow. Luckily, I'd also built into our route some alternative roads in the same area for contrast. These included the S370, the L92 and L93, roads you could enjoy at a reasonable speed without suffering from speedo paranoia. If I were making a return trip, I'd love to visit the Black Forest roads in better weather, but would give the B500 a skip for the most part. It's day 4, and so far, over 3 days, we've covered 600 miles and have visited 4 European countries, with another 2 to be added today. Today's journey takes us south of Lake Konstanz and down to Lankart near Davos in Switzerland. This will be the start of our assault on 6 mountain passes on day 5. We found our way down to the big water, a Rheinfall. Which couldn't decide really whether it was in Switzerland or Germany or maybe both.
It was, well, there was a lot of Swiss flags about.
Yeah, and what gave it away was the instructions in the loo telling you how to behave appropriately, so it must have been in Switzerland. And you don't have much choice but to behave appropriately in Switzerland, particularly when you're driving, as their police are quite hot on noise and speed infractions. We were very careful going through the towns and villages, but even so, I believe I was flashed once, even though I was going exactly on the speed limit. Then we found our way down the south side of Konstanz, headed for Lichtenstein.
Yes.
And on the way, we stopped at the Bodensee Cafe and realised we were making such good times.
Yes. On the banks of the Lake Konstanz.
Absolutely. That we built in an extra 100 miles of country riding just because we could.
Yeah.
Even in Switzerland. And actually, it was great fun. When we saw the chance, we turned off from the main road south of Konstanz and headed out into the country, looking for some fun roads that could be enjoyed within the 50-mile-an-hour national speed limit. The day held a number of surprises, not the least of which was that the 50-mile-an-hour limits weren't too restrictive if you found the right kind of roads. What wasn't a surprise was that a tractor kicking out manure across the fields smelt pretty bad. Not everyone seemed to take the speed limits too seriously. Here's a local who came flying past us in a 50k speed limit. And yes, he's wearing shorts and sandals. Mike and I stuck to the speed limits though, because no one wants to get a nasty surprise on a holiday. And it was a good job too, as just up the road we came across a mass gathering of police, presumably on the lookout for speeders. Bikes travelling in the other direction would have no warning about this lot. Overall, our ride round the Swiss countryside was great fun, but I particularly enjoyed the run downhill from Lichtenstein, bathing in a little coolness by association as I followed a dude on a Harley bagger. Day 5, our big assault on no less than 6 mountain passes, started off wet and warm and then grew wet and cold pretty quickly. And on the way over the Fluela Pass, Mike had a bit of a moment.
A momentary lapse of concentration, and then it suddenly occurred to me, because I was going along, we got past some coaches and bits and pieces. The visibility was poor, the road conditions were soaking wet, it was damp, it was cold, it was horrible. And I just forgot myself. And then as I was approaching a corner, it occurred to me, this could be a hairpin. And I'm going rather fast. Hit the brakes and tried to scrub some speed off, and immediately thought, what sort of grip level I got on this road, and naturally panicked, put my left foot down for whatever good that was going to do with it.
Yeah, that was going to save 500 kilos of bike and use. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in a moment of total irony, I missed Mike's special moment because my GoPro froze, just like the pair of us had done earlier. We made it over the Fluela Pass with temperatures dropping to 6 degrees, which was pretty uncomfortable. Down the other side, we found our way onto the Fuon Pass, much more reasonable temperatures and nice flowing roads. That was the day that we did. We'd done the Wolfgang Pass already, we didn't even notice. We did the Fluela Pass, Fuon, Umbrail, which I found a bit scary, frankly. There was one corner on there particularly that had me concentrating more than anyone should have to concentrate on the corner.
And it wasn't just that the corners were severe, they all are on those passes. It was also the fact that the roads were quite narrow and there was a lot of traffic on them comparatively. And
no barriers.
And no barriers, but when you were going up on the tight right-handers, you had to try and stay as close to your side of the road as possible, because coming down the other way were bikes, push bikes, coaches, camper vans, cars, everything you could think of.
the corner,
all of whom were going to cut the corner when they came down and around that way. So you couldn't really afford to go out too wide.
No, the corner I was thinking of had a kind of 1 in 3, 1 in 4 gradient, a berm in the middle. Was so tight, it was much tighter than you have to do for a bike test. And my only thought was, if I have to stop in the middle because some idiot is in my lane, the bike is going over. The Umbrel Pass was certainly the most challenging pass so far, at a height of 2,500 metres.
Italy.
Shortly afterwards, just as we reached Italy, I made a little mistake.
It was at this moment that he knew he f***ed up.
No.
Doing a U-turn on a steep, narrow mountain road was never going to be easy. This wasn't the time to be demonstrating my turn on a sixpence routine. In short, I wimped out. With my super careful U-turn completed, it was time to head for the Great Stelvio.
There's a fallen rock everywhere.
Compared to Umbrail, I found the Stelvio really easy and very enjoyable. Lots of fast, flowing, downhill tight hairpins and great scenery. The Stelvio's a rare sight indeed, snow in July set against the stark grey of the granite. I had to remind myself to look at the road, not the scenery. I was so enjoying the ride that I even forgot about feeling cold, even though it never really warmed up from the Fluela Pass earlier in the day. The temperature gauge never really got above 9 degrees or so. At just short of 2,800 metres, the Stelvio is, by a very small margin, the second highest mountain pass in Europe, and probably the most famous. Others have even borrowed the name. Both Asturias and central Portugal each have their own Stelvios, and even Gran Canaria has a mini version. Finally we made it to the Giovo Pass. The roads were fantastic, and the scenery was taken straight out of The Sound of Music. As we were relaxing in the last few miles, the locals had other ideas. Check out my left mirror.
That road race therapy of yours is
I was somewhat concerned that Mike might have a red mist moment and chase after the Porsche. But we'd only got a short distance left to our hotel, and he let it go. And what a hotel it was! A brilliant location high up in the mountains at San Leonardo in Pisiria. Great food and even better views set us up for our final day on this first leg of our BigUn tour. headed for the Austro-Italian border and ready for our assault on Slovenia and Croatia. Busy roads with few overtaking opportunities were a little frustrating, but these gave way eventually to a quieter twisty section that allowed us to stretch our legs a little. However, it was our morning ride that was the true delight. Setting out from the Passo Promolo, it was exciting from the get-go. I've saved the best till last and will finish with a 2-minute tribute to the area. If you made it this far into our tour video, you'll want to catch our other episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and be notified so you don't miss out. Oh, and making these videos takes a long time and no one gets paid for them. If you enjoyed the footage, drop us a like as it spurs us on to do more.